Hi, I'm Pearl. This is, I guess this is part 8 of Freedom. But this is kind of, I guess they're all special ones, but this one's kind of a special one because in about an hour here in England, we're going to do a minute silence for all the people who've died, all the health workers who've died from coronavirus during this pandemic in the UK. And it's over 100, and it's kind of hard to put into words because it's really hard to believe that this has happened, and it's hard to get your head around it. And I think it's great that we're having a minute silence in about an hour. And one of the things that I was thinking, well, what's my next subject going to be? What am I going to talk about next? And this morning I looked online and I looked at a very sad story that a doctor in New York, in the US, very sadly took her own life because of how difficult it was for her during this pandemic. And one of the reason yesterday I did the part 7 on letting go, because it really was about trying to teach a way of letting go of when you feel things pulling you down. Because I know that we have a very serious risk to mental health, what we might call mental health, as well as physical health. Now, if you've seen anything else I've done, you'll know that I always talk about our mind, body, spirit is all connected anyway. So we can't really isolate, mental health or physical health or spiritual health, because all these things are connected, and we know that. And I think that one of the ways that I've been able to treat things in myself, and I'm going to talk quite a bit about PTSD, is by working in a holistic way, working through trauma that is stored, in the body, in the mind, and it feels like it sort of traps the spirit. I'm going to talk through that as well. And we are living through an extremely challenging time, as many people say, possibly the biggest challenge that most of us will face, as a global thing in our lifetimes. But many of us have faced and will face huge challenges in our own personal lives. And so, but that's, it's kind of happening at the moment as well, obviously, because people are becoming bereaved, people are losing their loved ones, people are dying themselves. So they have to face their own mortality. Even if they recover, it can change you, and it can also be quite a significant trauma, obviously. And so as we started to go into this, one of the things that I realise is that for many people, this situation will trigger old trauma. It will trigger the feeling of being out of control, of being powerless. And we can see a lot of anger coming up with people who feel that they don't want to be told what to do, they don't want to be stuck in their homes. And a lot of that, obviously there are, financial considerations and all other kinds of considerations. But one big part of it is we don't want to feel out of control, because that often brings us back to the way it felt for us in situations before, when we didn't have any control, when we went through trauma in the past which we couldn't do anything about, where we may not have been able to help ourselves, we may not have been able to help other people. And as we can see from this very sad suicide in New York, and from many other stories that come out because of that it can be too much for someone to be in a situation where they cannot help others, or they feel that they cannot cope really with the situation. And of course that's me making an assumption about what happened for this lady. But I think that as we look around and we talk to people, we realise that sometimes these situations bring up all kinds of unhealed situations from the past that we haven't acknowledged. So we're in a situation where many people, and you could even say all of us, are experiencing current trauma. And many of us are experiencing previous trauma. And so I'm just going to start talking about PTSD in sense of all this trauma that we're dealing with. And it can even be about, when you feel you're going to lose somebody, but that you don't. You can experience all the emotions of losing someone or losing yourself. And it doesn't happen. But that doesn't mean to say you don't have that trauma, And so let me talk about my experience of trauma and PTSD. So for a very long time, I don't think I really thought I had PTSD. I didn't really think I had any sort of trauma. I thought I had dealt with things. And I thought that I was sort of living my life and getting on with things and but I did also have quite powerful periods of depression and migraines and things like that. So there's a whole lot of stuff, and nowadays if I have a migraine or some period of depression, I kind of learnt to sort of dive into it and look at the root cause and to, bring up anything that's still unhealed and what needs to come out, what needs to be released. But back then, I had no idea. And if somebody had said, finding yourself or authentic you, or I was like, yeah, that's me already. I'm finished. I'm done. I'm cooked already. I'm fine. I'm fine. And I just really had no idea at all, how much was below the surface. And so, when I, had my first real period of PTSD, it was a huge shock. It was a huge shock. And I was triggered by the 7/7 bombings in England of the tube stations, I think. And it was quite a big deal here in England, and it was after the Twin Towers, after 9/11. And I think the thing is that sometimes it's not okay. The biggest thing in the world can trigger you, but it can be at a time when things are already coming up. And I think I say, like, if you ever have a period of PTSD, it's not because you're getting worse, it's because you're getting better, because you are healing and you come to a place where you're ready to for the next level. So please, I would say that right now, if anybody out there is feeling that you're suffering from any symptoms of PTSD or similar conditions, don't think it's failure. This is success. This is success. And I'll talk more about that because I've written a lot about that in my book about the fear of success. Because it's as you're going up and getting, and I'm not even talking about like financial success or business success, but just like as you're getting happier and you're, for me, I had started dating and stuff like that. So I think that was all related as well. And I basically went to bed and woke up, with a panic attack, and I was in the middle of PTSD, and I felt like I was losing my mind, because I just felt so scared. I felt just terrified the whole time, and I just had to walk around. I had just to walk around for hours. I was walking around my town. If I had to go anywhere, I couldn't get in a car, couldn't get in a taxi, couldn't get in a bus. I think at the time I was quite lucky because I was between jobs, and I'd go out with friends and I'd walk to the next town to meet them for a drink, trying to sort of be normal, and I'd have like one drink with them and I'd be like, I've got to go now, gotta go. And looking back and from later periods of PTSD, what I realised is that it was kind of like the fear that had been stored in my body finally came out. And I don't know whether my cup's hot, whether my hands are sweating. And what I realised is that when I was younger, when I'd experienced certain types of trauma, I hadn't been strong enough to feel it, I hadn't been free enough. I hadn't had enough time and space to actually feel those feelings. So they'd just been pushed right down, push way down. And so I really just had to kind of live through that and find sort of coping mechanisms. And I used to say a lot of prayer. I used to walk around saying like long prayers, yea, though I walk through the valley of the and it really was just like one day at a time, and just it was a really difficult thing to understand. And I just found the thing for me was just walking, just walking everywhere, and just kind of going to bed and hoping that the next day was going to be better, and gradually it did, kind of dissipate, and whatever, had come up, I was able to let go of. And so I want to talk also about why and how we repress certain feelings and traumas. And I don't know if some of you are aware of a condition called multiple personality disorder. And I think that there's a lot in common with this. And so, for example, if somebody suffers trauma, sometimes what they can do is they kind of create another persona, another personality. And what they do in that case is it's kind of like, if I'm pretending to be this person, I'm living as this person, this other person who I'm not being is the one that perceived that trauma. So instead of being the person who experienced that and saw that and witnessed that or had anything to do with it, we're this person, we're this bright, shiny, I'm fine, everything's okay. And I didn't know that was kind of what I had done. But actually, as I learned and I read more and everything, I realised that most people do that. That most people walking around in the world today are wearing a mask. They're pretending to be somebody that they're not. Very often because they don't feel that the person who they truly are is good enough. So let me pretend to be somebody else. Let me do my hair up and do this, and let me pretend to be somebody who I think that everyone else is going to think is perfect and good and okay. Even if you don't like that person, even if you don't like the persona and the person you're pretending to be, sometimes it feels more important that everyone else likes them, that this person is successful, this person has it together, so I can pretend to be this person instead of really being the person who has those feelings, the person who doesn't have it together, the person who cries, the person who grieves. And so we create this other person. And it's so common. If you read any of the Don Miguel Ruiz books, we talk about the mask, we create this persona. And so one of the things with my therapist we used to work on a lot was a guided visualization about actually, walking through a garden and sitting with the real me, And it's a very popular one. It's a great visualization. It's in my book, Meditation for Angry People. And so at that time, very often what I would be doing is I would, if I had a real problem, I would sit down and I would visualise, I would walk in the garden and I would be with this person and we would talk and it was like the real me was sort of talking, and the mask person, the fake me, was starting to get to know and to love the real me and to know, so what would the real me do in this? What would Pearl do? What would real Pearl do? Not what would this person who I've been pretending to be do. And in my life, what I have discovered, we talk about finding yourself and your authentic self and this kind of thing, to really be naked and be yourself is one of the bravest and most courageous things that you can do. And what we discover is, maybe when we were younger, it really hurt when people said nasty things about us. So we hid ourselves away. And we weren't ready to deal with big emotions that we weren't really mature enough to deal with. But what I've learned as I go forward is, when you're being really happy and joyful and living your life the way you want to, it really doesn't matter what other people say. Yeah, okay, it stings a little bit. But really the most important thing is that we wake up and that we are happy in ourselves. And for me, as a writer, I had to become my real self, because otherwise I couldn't write. And that's the truth for a lot of artists, musicians, people like that. And why those groups of people have real difficulties often with addictions. Because it's really challenging to feel all your feelings. It's really challenging to walk around emotionally, I won't say physically, but naked, to trust that other people are not going to hurt you again. It's incredibly powerful, incredibly brave, and incredibly difficult. And so it's something that we have to, very often we have to learn how to do that. And that's why we need great teachers. We need great teachers to tell us it's okay to just be ourselves. It's okay to have emotions. It's okay to not be okay all the time. And these are the kind of expressions that you might be hearing at the moment. A lot of people are saying this kind of thing. And I wholeheartedly agree. But at the same time, for many of us, it's just not possible for us to experience our emotions and deal with them in real time. And that's especially true of people who are working, carers, healthcare workers, anybody who's supporting somebody else. Because in that moment is their moment. So you can't fall apart. I can't fall apart if I've just got to hold it together for them and for myself in that moment. And that's another thing I want to tell you and teach you about PTSD, and really about denial, is that it's perfect. It is an absolute perfect thing. And we often see things like PTSD touted as, a terrible scourge and da-da-da-da. In and of itself, PTSD makes sense. Denial makes sense. Because it's a natural way that we protect ourselves. And we protect ourselves through denial because we cannot deal with big losses in one day. And we protect ourselves with PTSD sometimes because we're still in that situation. So we cannot deal with that situation because we're spending every ounce of energy just surviving it. So while we're in this survival mode, there isn't room to fall apart. And one of the things that happened about that same time, so I had an accident in my car. So I was driving on a motorway, and my tyre shredded. I don't know if you ever had that happen, where the tyre just, it's quite scary. And I had to pull over really quickly onto the hard shoulder. And I was completely calm, not bothered. And I was summer day, so I was wearing t-shirt and shorts. And the only thing I really knew is I knew I couldn't stay in the car because it was right close to the road. So I got over and there was about, a foot or a couple of feet. And I had my phone, so I called the rescue, the car people. And I stood over there. And I was like, well, I'm all right. They're going to prioritise me because I'm a woman on my own. And there you go. Yeah, all right. I'm okay. I'm fine. And I was fine. And then the guy came and he stopped and he said, you need to get in. I said, I'm going to get the car. He said, no, this spot here is far too dangerous. He said, we need to go in the rescue van and we're going to go to the next lay-by. So we went up, we sat in the lay-by. And then he had to call the police. And he had to get the police to come out and cordon off the inside lane. So they had to come down, they had to close part of the motorway because where I was so dangerous. And of course I was like, was it? Really? Oh, I thought it was all right, So they had to cordon off that part of the motorway. And then once they'd cordoned it off, he could reverse back, put the car onto the back of the truck, take it into the lay-by, and then fix my tyre. And the fixing my tyre took like 5 minutes, And then the police could open up that side of the motorway and everything and get going. But what happened was, as soon as I got into his truck, I started to get scared. I started to get a little bit like that. And then when he rescued my car, I started to get even more scared. And then when I got back in the car, and everyone's like, yeah, everything's fine, you can go, get in the car, start driving, I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I was so scared. And, I ended up having a really long journey. And something kind of weird happened as well on that journey that I wrote about in my book. And I ended up driving through my old town, when I grew up, because I got diverted. So the road was closed and I had to go that way to get home. So by the time I got home, I was like that, And for like a whole day afterwards, I was just like shaking. My body was shaking with the fear. And as you can see from that, it's like when the accident happened, when I was most in danger, standing on the side of the road, I felt nothing. I felt no fear at all. But as it became safer and safer and safer, more and more fear came up. Because it wasn't so dangerous for me to be incapacitated by that fear. Whilst I was in that situation, my mind, body, spirit went, no, stop. You will not feel those emotions. You will not, you might be aware mentally of what's going on, but you're not going to feel anything. And that's one of the beauties, if you like, of the process of PTSD. And if we look at it like that, we say, this is a perfect process. Just like grieving is a perfect process. It's a beautiful, natural way that we are protected from the worst things that happen to us. We are protected from the trauma of what's going on. But what happens is, as soon as we get into that safe space, the trauma then hits. And so I think it's like with grieving as well. Very often we then, consciously or subconsciously, we avoid the situations where we relax. We avoid the situations that make us truly happy. We avoid the things that bring us joy. We avoid living. We avoid life. Because in those moments of going for a walk on the beach, or listening to a beautiful piece of music, or dancing it out in Zumba, all the feelings come up that we have been repressing. And it's so hard, because, and I want to tell you, I want to give you hope if you are struggling with any of these things, because I feel like I've been through so many periods of PTSD, and I feel like I've come out the other side, and I'm so happy and joyful and grateful that I had, the time and the support and the energy of people to help me through those things. And I suppose one of the things that really resonated with me this morning, I'm going to have to stop using that word resonated. Everyone's using it too much, One of the things when I read the story about this doctor in New York this morning is that very often with PTSD we have another thing which some people might call like survivor guilt, where we were not able to help the people around us at a certain time. And that could be for all kinds of reasons. It could be that we didn't know what to do. Maybe we froze. Maybe we just didn't realise that they needed our help. And maybe we just, we were just too small. Maybe we felt powerless, or we were powerless. And I want to say to anybody who's in that situation, if you're suffering from survivor guilt or anything like that, the most important thing to say to you right now is you did your best. And that may be hard to believe, that may be hard to understand. Because you might feel, looking back, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? And you would have done. I would have done. If I had known better, I would have done better. But I didn't. I did the best that I could at the time. And so did you. And so did everyone. And that is something we are all going to have to learn and live by as we go forward, as we have so many recriminations. And it's really hard because we look at other people and say, well, why do, we can get so angry at other people in terms of the mistakes that they've made, because then they've caused us problems and they've cost us so much. And it's going to happen, and it is happening. And I would say if you have real anger with other people, it's really important to pick up the mirror and look in the mirror and say, where am I angry at other people and where am I angry at myself? Where is it I cannot let somebody else off the hook because I can't let myself off the hook? And I was reading a book. I like to read some real lightweight books on the weekend, anytime I want, really. And it was sort of a romantic kind of, but it ended up being about sort of like stalker ex-husband, and about somebody running away from somebody who'd been, abusive. Yeah, really like books I like to read. I always pick up these books, they end up being quite dark, And in this book, she had been running, from the husband for a really long time. So she changed her name and her hair, and the thing is, with something like that, when we say, if we've been through a trauma, maybe you've been in an abusive relationship, many of us leave the relationship and get away, and, that person could, be in prison or have a restraining order, or they could even be dead. But we can inside be still running from the situation because we haven't dealt with it and we haven't processed it. And to do that, as I keep saying, is an amazing act of courage. So often we find people taking time out to go on spiritual retreats, go on, yoga retreats and things like that. And very often it's because there is a deep, what's the word? I don't want to use the word trauma again. A deep pain. There is something that needs to be healed. And there are so many ways of doing that. And sometimes, it feels like we do something, and I know I've done a lot of healing and massage. Sometimes I'll do something and I think, oh, that didn't do anything, But sometimes it's a bit like going out and watering the plants or something in the garden, and you look at it and it's like, I remember there's some beautiful plants here, which you might have seen in the video yesterday. And when they were sort of coming up, it was every day I was so impatient to see the plants, you know, to see the flowers come out. And I could see them. It was like a tease every day. It was a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And then one day, one, and then another, and then another, and another, and another, and another, and another. And that happens as we go through healing. That we start to, you know, in a negative way, sometimes those dominoes fall and it feels like, oh, why is this all happening now? Why is this going on? But it's very often, it's kind of like we're at a moment when we're ready to go, you know, like those dominoes, we're ready to go. And we've been running for so long, you know, that we just need to just turn around and face it, you know, get over it. We need to, you know, there's a point when we have to turn around and face our demons. And I want to give you hope. I want to really give you hope that if this is something that resonates with you, so you've got to find another word. If this is about you, if this feels this is about you, that PTSD is like grief, and it's so related to that. That we can live our lives in fear. You know, we can live our lives in fear and run away from it. And it's so hard because we need help. You know, most of us need support and help and love to get us through these difficult times. We do. You know, and I've done some of my stuff wandering off into the woods and doing this and that. But most of the time, you know, what happened was I would come back to a place of safety. I would come back to a place where I was a guest and I had people around me who cared and who took care of me. And maybe that's why those moments were the moments which were the best and the worst, because this stuff kind of came up for me. And maybe the reason that so many people are dying at the moment from suicide is that they don't have that love and support, you know. So what's the answer to that? I think we just need to try and love and support each other even more. And I hope if you're watching this, you know, you know, it is not easy, and take all the help you can get. And so I want to talk about going through a big bit of PTSD that I went through. And this is when I went off travelling and I was in Southeast Asia. And it was very strange because one of the things that happened, I was in Borneo and I was staying in this really lovely place. And we had a rainstorm, a huge thunderstorm. And I love thunderstorms. But it was so violent, it was so loud, I was terrified. I was crying, I was holding onto the bed, and I was crying, you know, it was so awful. And in the morning I walked around the garden and I felt like, you know, very much like, you know, why is this happening and what's going on? And, you know, and I was shaking all morning. I was shaking, you know. And I suddenly thought, you know, the universe, this storm, it's chasing the fear out of me. You know, it's pushing me into these situations of, you know, of trauma, of being so scared. And so then I went and found a, you know, kind of a safer space to sleep in. And then I was okay. And I thought, you know what? When this stuff comes up, it's not the worst, because then it's out of me. Then it's gone. You know. Then I can live my life. I can get on with things. And I started to understand it's like, you know, like a fever, that you just have to ride it out. You know, this is just the fear that I experienced, that I've internalized, and I just need to let go. And when I went to Bhutan, that was where it got really, really bad. And it's such a strange country, because on the one hand it was so safe, on the other hand it was so dangerous. because I was so supported. I had this lovely hotel. I had a roommate. And just so many things were happening. You know, we were traveling, and there were lots of animals, and there was heat, and there was, you know, so many kind of like dangerous things. But I remember sort of being so supported, and it was like we had this dinner in the hotel, went to bed, and the next day the guy said, he said, you know, they told me you didn't eat your dinner. You know, are you okay? And I thought, gosh, you know, that's the last time somebody said you didn't eat your dinner. You know, that's something your family say. But it was like being with family, but in a way of like, I wasn't supporting, like it wasn't like being with my family, because I wouldn't, it's difficult to fall apart because, you know, for me that doesn't feel like the right thing to do. So I needed to be with people who were like my family, but it didn't matter to them so much if I was upset. Because you know what it's like when you're around somebody who loves you and you get upset and it upsets them. They go, well, what can I do? What can I do? And it's like, oh, just let me cry. I just want to cry. And one of the things that happened was, the first night I had, when this fear came up, it was so bad, my roommate, you know, I woke up and I think I had a spider run at me in the middle of the night, and it just triggered me. That was it. I was gone. And she was like, it's okay. She was half asleep. It's all right. You know, don't worry. I'm here. All this kind of thing. And it was so great because she didn't swear at me. She didn't say, why are you being so noisy? She was just like, oh, don't worry, honey. It's just a spider. And I just lay there in the bed like, oh, yeah. And there's a lot more to it. But the thing is that it was like a fever that had to kind of come out of me. So the nature, everything there seemed to be like chasing it out of me. And the next night, you know, it was, again, I had it, but it wasn't as bad, you know. It was kind of like, okay, that wasn't as bad last night. Okay, tomorrow will be easier. And slowly, that's exactly what happened. And, you know, I had another period of PTSD last year. No, the year before, you know, getting mixed minds up. And it was the same sort of thing of keeping everything together, being able to keep things together. And there just came a point for the first time I kind of left, and I went to this lovely hotel, went to this really great hotel, and I walked in and I was like, oh, this is wrong, that's wrong. I mean, it was a bit of a dodgy room inside. It's a lovely hotel, but some strange things. And I just remember, you know, getting in the bed, you know, it's a very soft bed, and I was literally just holding on, and for me it was like, well, why am I feeling like this? What's going on? I was like, it's okay, it's PTSD. So again, you've been here before, don't worry about it, just ride it out. You know, it's like having diarrhea, or a migraine, or a fever again. And it is stuff coming out of you and being released and just going, and you just gotta, for me, my experience, my way of doing PTSD is just let it go. And it's exactly the same as the way I deal with grief. When stuff comes up that is just, you know, grieving, just gotta cry it out, just let it out, just let it go. And you can do that whole thing of saying, oh, you know, we're all one with the universe and everything is perfect and all that. Yeah, but you know what? Diarrhea may be perfect, but it ain't fun. You know, so in that sense, when we go through that sort of healing, the healing period of getting rid of things, and our body, mind and spirit going, no, don't want that, no, that's going, no, all gone. It's not pretty. It's not necessarily easy. And sometimes it takes a really long time to find a space where we can do that, you know, where we trust the situation, we trust the people, we trust ourselves, and we trust that this is a process that will end. You know, grieving, sometimes it feels so scary to step into grief because it feels like it's never going to end. And it feels like the pain that we feel when we're grieving feels like it could kill us, you know. And it's really hard, you know, but it's, if we want to live our life and not the life of this persona that we've created, then the only way out is through. You know, the only way out, the only way to freedom from trauma is to stop running. And all the people who are working at the moment in healthcare, you know, they're just amazing people, but they're human beings, and they're not invincible. We are not invincible. You know, we may be spiritual warriors, they may be heroes, but we are not invincible. We are human, beautiful, perfect, soft, fleshy, air-breathing, blood-circulating human beings. And we need support. We all need support. We all need love. We all need healing. We all need, you know, we need to eat. We need to sleep. We need the medicine that we need. We need the protective clothing that we need. Whether that's just wearing a warm coat because it's cold or rainy, or, you know, being a doctor who needs specific tools, specific support. And so, you know, if you are in a situation, maybe you're a carer, maybe you're a healthcare worker, it's so difficult, and it's so difficult to, it's really hard. It's like, because I suffer from migraines, you know, there's a thing that, and if you don't understand migraines, you know, when you've had one, you understand, you know, it's pretty bad. And there's a thing for a lot of people that as long as they're working really hard, as long as they're strung out and on adrenaline and they're doing all this stuff, they don't get migraines. But the second that they stop, that's when it hits. And that's the thing with grieving, that's the thing with PTSD. It's when we come into that safe space, when we come into that supported space, that often it all falls apart. It feels like we're falling apart, but it's so necessary, like falling asleep, that we have a time to just let go and process our emotions and process our feelings and let it out. You know, it's like, you know, not wanting to be tacky, but it's like not having a poo for however long. You know, there's only so long your body can support that. You know, we need to release our emotions. We need to let go. And, you know, with PTSD, sometimes we can live our whole lives with that and not engaged. You know, I lived for decades, you know, with stuff properly pushed right down. And it's, I think the thing is, it's hard sometimes to explain to people because they don't necessarily see on the surface what's so different about you. Why have you changed so much, you know? And it's just kind of like saying, well, I'm happy now. You know? And a lot of people, it's so hard sometimes because people see sometimes when you've got it all together and it all looks glossy on the outside, and they don't realise that inside things are just not that great. And so it's a great feeling to be able to own up to what's not right, what's not good. And if you imagine, you know, like, you know, people have a marriage or something that isn't working and it's all confusing, you don't quite know why, and why is this relationship not working, you know, there's all stuff going on. And sometimes, you know, people get divorced and stuff and they say, oh, I just feel so much better now, you know, because I was just trying so hard every day and nothing, you know, it just wasn't right, But the thing is, you know, all that time, you know, we have a relationship with ourselves, you know, we are the love of our own lives. And sometimes we're not treating ourselves right. You know, we're not letting ourselves be who we are. You know, we might be forcing ourselves to eat this kind of diet, or we might be forcing ourselves to have this kind of social interaction or do this kind of sport, or because, you know, everybody else is doing it. You know, you think very much about sort of you know, like a country club world or a social sort of like world where you've got to have this handbag, or you've got to do this, or you've got to do that. And all the time you're doing that, you know, you're in with the in crowd, but you're not in with yourself. You know, you're not being kind to yourself. You're not taking care of yourself. You know, and it's funny because when you say things, sometimes they sound really superficial. You know, but there's nothing superficial about taking care of yourself. You know, it's a very funny world that we are in at the moment. All the talk we have about stay home, stay safe, look after yourself because you don't want to be a burden on the NHS. And they're even, in the UK, they're even having to sort of reverse that now and say, but ask for help when you need it. You know, don't be a burden on the NHS, but ask for help when you need it, because we're seeing too many people not asking for help. We're seeing too many people staying at home when they should be going to hospital. So it's a balance of taking care of ourselves and allowing others to support us. And it can seem, it's funny because I always say, like, so often I would look at, you know, what looks like what's going on when I post things on social media or write about stuff. And I stayed in some of the most beautiful places in the world. I went to some of the most amazing spas. I went to like the best spa in the world, which I had previously looked at and went, no, it's too expensive, not going there. And these are the most incredible healers around the world. And I was in such a bad place. And I was in Kuala Lumpur, and I was looking, I said, well, where can I go? Where can I go? I need help so bad. I've suddenly uncovered like this, you know, more stuff within that I need to desperately support with. And I was like, well, you know, there's this place, you know, that's not so far away. And I was like, right, I'm going there. I just went online, went, don't think about it, just do it. Don't think about it, just book it. Doesn't matter how much money it costs, da 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 da. And I went. And it's like, when I got there, it was what I needed. And it was everything. It was the food, it was the hotel room, it was the you know, the beach, and it was the spa, and it was it was so many things. It kind of went a bit awry in the end. Things went wrong in the end, as they tend to do when I'm leaving somewhere. It's like, yeah, you definitely need to go now. But it's one of those things that we see things like spas and hotels and holidays as being decadent, you know, and it's difficult right now because most of those businesses are going to be like shut down. But when I look back, I think, what would have I done without that? What would I have done without having that support at that time? I have no idea. So in a way, like when I've written all these books and I've written about all this stuff, it's like I've had so much support. You know, if I made a list of all the therapy and all the other therapies, I did make a list, as I wrote about 500 different types of therapy that I've had and tried. Just to be me. Just to be me. It seems crazy. So I guess I'm just saying, you know, sometimes we need to keep reaching out and finding, if something doesn't work, try a different therapy. If somebody, you know, find somebody who you can trust that can be there for you. And for me, so often it was just somebody who had, you know, like here, a great place for me to stay, where I felt supported and I could, you know, I felt safe enough that then I could do the work, then I could let go and release and let go of anything. And for many people, they don't have that support, they don't have that safe space, and we desperately need it. We all desperately need it. And I hope that me talking about PTSD and me talking about my experience with PTSD and trauma can help you, because you can get through it. It is possible to get through it. But I did not do it on my own at all. Yeah. So it's okay to ask for help. And the kind of help that you need might be completely different to anybody else. You know, what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for somebody else. And I want to just finish on one thing, which I would say is, sometimes we go through trauma and we feel so bad about it, and we have the survivor guilt and even the grief. We feel so bad about who we are truly, or who we've had to pretend to be, or the things that we've done. And we can feel so negative about who we are. And we can feel that we don't deserve to be helped. We can feel that, who am I to have that incredible massage? Who am I to go and stay in a beautiful place and have somebody support me? Who am I to go on an expensive spiritual retreat? Who am I to take a day off work just because I can't cope anymore? When there are so many other people out there who deserve it, so many other people who are so amazing and wonderful and deserve stuff. But I'll tell you the truth, you know, that's your ego talking, because there is nobody above us and there is nobody below us. We are all equal in the world. There is nobody above you and there is nobody below you. And it doesn't make you less to ask for help. And it's important that you reach out and ask for help. And don't feel guilty. Don't feel guilty that you don't deserve it. Don't feel guilty that, no, go help that person, go help that person, you know, because I've been there. You know, be honest. Take what you need. You know, it's the message of the title of the first book in the Camino series I wrote. Take what you need. If you need a day off, take what you need. If you need to go and take a nap, take what you need. If you need to read a book, you know, pay for it, but take what you need. If you need therapy, if you need, you know, anything, take what you need. And slowly, as you take what you need and you come through, you'll get to know yourself better and you get to know what you do need. And for me, what I need is, right now, I need to do things like this. I need to use my experience and what I've learned and share it in a way that may be helpful to other people. But it helps me too. As I go through this, I remember all the things that I've learned. And they say you teach what you need. And if there's one person out there, you know, that I can help, that's great. And I really hope that this helps. I really hope that you can understand that this is a process. You know, PTSD and dealing with trauma is a process. One day at a time, and we get through it. You know, if we approach it, you know, with, what's the word? Curiosity and safety first. You know, you can't grieve in one day. You can't get fit in one day. You know, it's a process. It's one day at a time. And all you have to do is your best for today. Yeah. And I know you're doing your best. We're all doing our best. And so many of the aspects of what we have to learn, you know, I've been through this. I'll do some more videos as well, don't we? But things like forgiveness, you know, forgiving others, forgiving ourselves, learning compassion, learning unconditional love, having courage, being able to stand up and accept the truth, and being able to reconcile ourselves to all the parts of ourselves. Because very often it's easy to reject the things that we may feel have contributed to that trauma. We'll talk about that some more later. But you are perfect, and you are beautiful, and you are amazing. You know, maybe you're pretending to be somebody who's not. Maybe you're pretending to be, you know, somebody you don't really like anymore. And maybe that person was the exact perfect person for you to pretend to be, to get through, to survive. I say it's like being a secret agent. Sometimes you go through things in life sometimes where you have to pretend to be somebody you're not. So then there's a moment where you recognise and you say, you know what? I do not have to be that person anymore. I can put it down and I can just be me. And what a relief it is to just be yourself. And it's an act of courage, and it takes time and it takes healing. But I think we can do it, and we can get there, and we can be a more honest and authentic and compassionate and forgiving and respectful world. I believe that. I believe now is the time for us to let go of a lot of things. And I think it's amazing the way that we're supporting each other. I think it's so beautiful. And it's very hard sometimes because I think on the one hand, sometimes it sounds like it's just words. All I'm saying is just words. And the thing I would say right now, because I'm going to end this, because I'm going to go and do the minute silence, I wish more than anything I could do more than words. I wish I could open my arms and give a great big hug to everybody in the NHS, to everybody who's working, and everybody around the world. So I want to give the whole world a virtual hug and say, I love you, and you're amazing. However you're dealing with this, you're amazing. And keep taking care of yourself, and just be good. Just be good to yourself. When you love yourself and take care of yourself, it kind of starts to come shooting out of you. And that love comes out, and it's like a star. You hit everybody, and it heals the whole world. So when you heal yourself, you are healing the world. So that healing is the most important thing, for a lot of us. Not necessarily every day, I don't know, sometimes we just go through survival. But never think that healing yourself is anything other than really, really important work. Anyway, lots of love. I hope it helps. And please take care of yourself. And remember, I love you, and you are amazing, you are perfect, and it's okay to ask for help. It really is. Okay?